Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Infinity Workforce Solutions Best Practice webinar series. My name's Steve Kessler, and I'm going to host the program this morning. We've got a really timely topic, I think, today. It's one that's very near and dear to me. The industry has been suffering some the last couple of years, at least the last 15, 18 months. Everybody's looking for ways to improve productivity and profitability. And frankly, training can be one of those ways where you can have a positive impact in that area. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is a quote by Benjamin Franklin, where he says that an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. So there's absolute proof that properly trained employees will improve a company's profitability and productivity. Why don't all of you, a couple of housekeeping items before I introduce our guest. Most of you, I think, already know Keith. He's been on several of our programs. Everybody is muted on this webinar, so we can't hear you. So if you have a question that you'd like to pose or comments, feel free to type those in the chat box there, or you can use the Q&A piece that you have down there in the tray to pose your questions. And then we'll try to take those questions after Keith has gone through his presentation. So if y'all wanted to just jump on the chat and tell us who you are and who you're with and where you're from, we'd love to be able to see who's out there. So while y'all are doing that, let me introduce our guest. Keith, as I said, has been a guest on our program several times. But I think of all the people I could have as a guest on a program about training, I couldn't think of anybody better than Keith. He's a lifelong learner and somebody that has a passion for delivering effective training that helps people succeed in life. He grew up in the transportation industry. He's sort of rooted in that industry around safety. He currently works as a content coordinator for transportation, training programs manager, and SOP developer. He's worked as a safety trainer in classroom instruction, post-incident training, job hazard observations. So he's got the perfect background, I think, to speak to us about how we might be able to develop a culture of learning. So without any further delay, Keith, I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. So learning cultures, right? I think it is a common topic of conversation right now, especially in any environment. Getting people to want to learn and to be engaged in learning is seemingly hard to do. So if we're not teaching topics that they're interested in, or taking those hard to get interested in topics and making them interesting, we're not going to have any success in that field. So today's topic, a learning culture. So learning culture is best described as an organizational environment that encourages and supports continuous learning, development, and the sharing of knowledge among its members. So if you're on this webinar, then you may have already spent some time researching the benefits of a learning culture. We're going to take a look at some of the key returns to focus on. So the biggest one and a great place to start is improved performance, right? Continuous learning helps employees enhance their skills, leading to improved job performance and productivity. Employee engagement, employees feel valued and motivated when they have opportunities to learn and grow, leading to higher levels of engagement and job satisfaction. Essentially, when we're providing opportunities to employees, they feel that we have an investment in them because they have an investment in us, right? That's why they show up to work every day. So returning that provides value. Returning that provides employee engagement. Adaptability. Learning culture makes an organization more adaptable to change by equipping employees with skills needed to meet new challenges and opportunities. So this isn't just, training about the current job that I'm doing, but maybe it's career pathing and training about the job that I want to be doing. Maybe it's learning soft skills, right? Things like emotional competency, general communication skills, you name it. We have the ability to provide it, but by doing so, right, we make employees feel engaged, and we provide better opportunities for them within the workforce. And bottom line, retention. You should already know this, but I'm going to state it. Investing in an employee or in employee development can increase retention rates, as employees are more likely to stay with a company that supports their career growth, right? They're more likely to stay with a company where they feel like they are being invested in and they are getting a return for their time other than monetary value. LinkedIn Learning says 94% of employees say they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their learning and development. Mm-hmm. Say that again, 94% of employees. Companies with comprehensive training programs have a 218% higher income per employee and 24% higher profit margin than those without.
Crazy.
So issues, pitfalls, and points of failure, right? Some of us have tried to instill a strong learning culture before, but find that we're running against a brick wall or beating our head against that brick wall. So knowing what to do and creating a learning culture starts by knowing what not to do. So the first common hurdle is lack of leadership support. Without strong endorsement from leadership, learning initiatives may not be taken seriously by employees. Yeah. If I can't look up the chain and see that my superior is also investing in themselves and has that investment in me, then I find no value in trying, find no value in putting forth effort. Leaders should actively participate in learning activities, model lifelong learning, and allocate resources to support these initiatives. That learning culture has to start from the top. Learning cultures must feel organic and not forced. And when support and accountability comes from the top, employees listen. The next one is cost. So many look at the cost of changing to something like an LMS and a company guided learning as unobtainable, right? We think, well, the cost to switch to standardized technology or utilizing an app and putting a regular subscription or annual payment together, it's going to cost us more than what we're doing right now. And we'll look at that cost here in a minute, comparatively overall, but in general, it's less expensive than you think, and the cost of not doing so is greater. The reality is you're teaching anyway, training, retraining, doling out discipline because someone didn't hold on or adhere to that last task they were trained on by word of mouth, right? A digital training environment allows us to, one, put what we've taught them back into their hands and teach the same lesson and reinforce the same values. But additionally, it provides the opportunity for self-guided learning. So learning in general is a cost of doing business and always has been. A learning culture can save cost by centralizing training and reducing retraining. Lack of measurement and evaluation. So if we're not defining what success looks like, then we're not going to get there. So without assessing the effectiveness of learning programs, it's difficult to know what's working and what needs improvement. And often this is a primary failure point. So first, determine your success criteria, right? Where do you want to get to? Pick out your general employee, whether that's a construction worker, like site foreman. Where do you define success in their role? Is it lack of workplace injuries and accidents? Is it reduced turnover within subordinates? First, define success, and then as you instill learning culture, as you instill good training, keep an eye on those values. Training should return just as much as you're putting in, if not more. So fact is, if you don't teach them, somebody will. You have the ability to create consistency simply by creating a culture where learning and skills development is centralized. What to train on. Now, at this point, I haven't told you anything you don't already know or expect to hear, right? I doubt it. In fact, if you're wondering whether or not to jump to an internal centralized learning system or whether or not it's beneficial, you more than likely already know the answer. And that's why you're here. So let's not kid ourselves. What we're talking about here, a learning culture in this day and age, is nothing more than centralized learning that we all agree on is beneficial and all agree on, well, is beneficial to the work we do every day, right? Training should reinforce company values. Training should be reinforced in multiple media forms. If I'm teaching about something in digital media, I should probably see a sign or two that reinforces that value, right? If I'm learning about preventing slips, trips, and falls, I should probably turn a corner in a hazard area and see a sign that tells me, watch your step or use 3 points of contact, right? So what to train? Well, start with your industry. Chances are you already know the required things, right? So at a high level, we have things like onboarding, role-specific training, skills enhancement or post-incident training, and annual required trainings. But take a look at your industry and start with that as your meat and potatoes, right? Our items that we know we're training anyway, and how can we, one, make them better, two, make them shorter, three, get better value out of them. We tend to beat people over the head with death by PowerPoint or, abusive classroom instruction where we're saying the same thing over and over, only because we're not getting return on value somewhere else. So if we just say it multiple times over, that means we're going to get what we want, which isn't true, right? We need to say it differently. We need to teach it differently. So find a way to communicate to those that you're training so they're going to absorb the material. We'll talk about that in a second. So decide on training by talking to your people. Talk to tenured employees. I promise you, they won't hesitate to tell you what is missing. They won't hesitate to tell you what they want to learn. They also won't hesitate to tell you what they don't like about what they're already learning. Learning cultures start by making employees feel heard. Think about how encouraging it would be for John, your 15-year-plus flatbed driver, to see training on something that he told you was missing, either via conversation or solicited email or text message, you name it. Not only does this person take that training that they asked for, but I bet you they take the next training too. Easiest way to say this, one, just ask. Because when we learn to listen, they listen to learn.
Okay. Hey, Keith.
Here's a good one.
Just don't mean to interrupt here, but back to your previous slide talking about what to train on. One of the things that we talk to some of our customers and folks about is most companies have KPIs, key performance indicators, things that they measure on a regular basis. And we just encourage our customers to, take a look at those KPIs and then what are the employee behaviors that are necessary to make those KPIs reach the goal or be successful. That's what I would say is very role-specific training to identify the best behaviors or best practices, so to speak. And then you can train specifically to that and impact actually different line items, expense items in your balance sheet, for example. So just wanted to toss that in there. It popped into my head when you were talking about role specific training, and that's one way to kind of decide where you need to train.
Right, right. And don't be afraid to redefine your KPIs. If you feel like you've been beating your head against the wall because you're not reaching the specific performance indicators that you have in place,
right?
Are your KPIs correct? Right? Are we looking for the right thing for an employee? And understand that we cannot define success of one role versus another using the same value.
That's
right. Those KPIs need to be different.
Yeah.
And make them attainable. That's the other thing, right? Your employees feel valued and they feel heard when they feel like their goals are attainable.
Absolutely.
So just in a solicited open discussion with a handful of drivers here and there, I always like to ask, if you could learn more on something, what would it be? What would you either want to learn more about, or what would you want your peers to learn about? So common things, right? Mirror setup, proper lane changes, right? You're in transportation here, but out on the road, you see somebody make a risky lane change. They didn't turn their turning signal on early enough, or moved over too quickly, didn't provide speed and space, following too closely. So these are things that drivers said, hey, I want to learn more about that. How do I inspect my brake components? What are slack adjusters? How am I adjusting my slack adjusters? They're automatic nowadays. How do I do that? Right? Health and well-being was a great one. Somebody said, how can I be more fit? How can I avoid, heart disease and things like that while I'm out on the road? Eating right. These are things that, while we want them to know, let's call these columns A, B, and C. While we want them to know about columns A and C here, we also have to give them the other stuff that we want them to learn. So columns A and C here, let's say these are the things that they need to know while they're out on the road. These are the things that keep our CSA points low, right? These are the things that keep violations out of our pocket, out of our email, right? But you're more than likely going to get better return on investment if you're also providing the things that they want to see, right? So we give them a little bit of this column B here: money management, saving for retirement, buying a truck, general health and wellness. These are things that they want to learn about. And if I'm jumping in there to learn about things that I want to learn about, I'm also going to take time to learn about the things that you want me to learn about. So training and delivery. We've talked a little bit about it, but the world really has moved to digital training as a primary method of training employees, right? That's, we have the ability to put training directly into employees' hands, right? It's accessible anywhere. We don't have device limitations. We can set up micro learning. We have built-in metrics, historical data, cost reduction, but digital training through a learning management system really has become a cornerstone of modern organizational development. LMS platforms provide centralized and scalable, flexible ways to deliver, track, and manage training and education. So these allow employees to access training materials from anywhere at any time, making it easier for remote and geographically dispersed teams to stay up to date. Some of us, in the world of transportation, may have a primary hub in, a major city, but you also may have something out in the middle of nowhere that you've got 2 or 3 trucks operating on, some random contract. How are you delivering training to those guys? Well, it's either by email, phone call, or digital training delivery, and ensuring that the message is the same. Training with an LMS can be accessed for the most part on various devices, right? Like laptops, smartphones. In general, this increases that convenience for learners. Some of our, some drivers want to take training while they're in terminal or while they're at home on their laptop. But what about when they hit the bunk at night, right? I know you're going to say, well, they should be sleeping. Let's be honest, they're not. They're looking at their cell phone before they're going to sleep. Put something of value in their hands. Micro learnings. Another great one here is breaking training down into bite-sized modules that are easier to digest. So, question here, what is the average attention span of an adult learner? The average attention span. So some of you are going to say 8, some going to say 9, 10, 11, 12. So 8 to 12 is probably what I'm hearing. And others of you, I probably lost on slide 2. So average attention span of an adult learner is 8 to 12 seconds nowadays, especially when we're talking about digital media. Data analytics, this is great. This is something that real time we can look and see, how many people are taking this training? How many people are passing this training? Is it effective? Right? Comparing the data analytics that you get out of a learning management system to your real world analytics. What's happening in the company? What are your CSA scores, or what are your accidents and injuries? You can really start to adjust your training to meet your metrics. Start quarterly if you have to, but find a way to make those two numbers meet and start attacking your problem areas. If you know your problem area is, let's say, unsafe, right? As we've got, Operation Safe Driver Week here coming up. So let's say that's your problem area. Speeding, distractions, failure to obey, all these things that fall into that. Those are things that you can be teaching directly to in bite-sized training. Reduced training costs. So digital training eliminates the need for physical materials for the most part. Reduce travel expenses, reduce the need for multiple on-site trainers or retraining trainers to teach the same message, and really reduces that overall training cost. Now, just how much? This is a fun fact. According to the 2023 Training Industry Report, on average, companies are spending $1,200 per learner annually. Now, this depends largely on the size of company, but larger companies, roughly about $1,600 per learner per year. And you're talking about general communication, printed training materials, reviewing that training material. Smaller companies, right about $826 per employee. This is when we're still teaching physical trainings. This also does add in things like transportation to a training location. Now, I'm not at all saying get rid of your classroom training. Classroom training still holds value. Physical teaching still holds value. Direct post-incident and accident conversations still hold value. But as a part of your learning culture, you should be reinforcing the same message. If I'm teaching, let's say 12 to 15 seconds is what we should be looking ahead, right? A good following distance of 7 to 8 seconds. If we're teaching that in digital media, we should be teaching that in the classroom and should be teaching that in post-accident and incident. Our message should be consistent. Consistency helps build your training culture, because I don't feel, let's say I'm random operator number 1, I don't feel that walking in one door or walking out of one door and walking into the other, I'm getting a different message.
Hey, Keith, a couple of comments here about, cost reduction. One of the, and again, I'm totally on board with, maintaining some amount of in-person training, which I think is very effective.
Certainly.
It gives you a little bit better opportunity for quicker feedback. But one of the areas of cost reduction that can be done, and this kind of goes together with micro learning, that you can provide really short training pieces that a driver, for example, could consume while they're waiting to be loaded or unloaded. It's training that can be accomplished without it really interfering with the driver's productive day. And if you think about, in-person training, if you have those trucks parked against a fence out there, they're not generating any revenue at all while they're parked. So there's a cost associated with that downtime also. So I think I'm kind of re-saying what you said, but certainly anytime you have the trucks parked, pretty much everything has come to a standstill.
Right.
So that's certainly a cost that needs to be considered.
Right. Yeah, I think we've all heard a driver say it before, right? If my wheels aren't turning, I'm not earning.
That's right.
And that's just as frustrating for the driver as it is for the company. Anybody on here who may be in dispatch, fleet manager, driver manager, operations, you've got let's say your driver's been involved in an incident, whether that's an injury or gain CSA points at a roadside inspection, but you need to bring them in for physical training. Well, that's hard to do, and especially if you need to bring them into a primary company location in your remote location. Now you've got to figure out dispatch to get that driver off of their normal route and route it into wherever your specific training location is, or wherever that trainer is that they're going to meet them and go through that. So now we've got routing, we've got fuel, right? We've got wear and tear on the vehicle, and we've got all this time that the driver isn't making money on top of using their hours of service to get there. Right? So there's a lot of loss there that, in a digital environment, we can put the training into their hands, and we can have a face-to-face conversation on the phone just as well as we can in person.
True.
So regardless of the platform, training should always provide value and reinforce beliefs. So when to train and how to train. So I'm sure you have your annual or semi-annual training requirements, HR trainings like harassment, discrimination prevention training, industry requirements like hazardous materials awareness, HM 126, or OSHA requirements like hot work permits, fall arrest systems, proper PPE, you name it. But what are you talking about monthly? And is it related to industry topics or events? That is it seasonal? So do yourself a favor, get a calendar, Excel sheet, you name it, but make a monthly plan for your continuing education for an entire year. Map it out and stick to it. 1, this is consistency. 2, for your operations teams, this builds expectation. I can say, hey, here's what we're training on for the rest of the year, and here's what you can expect. And an added note to that, make sure that whatever training you're providing to your drivers or whatever industry you're in, their direct support also takes that training. We should be able to share in common conversation. I should be able to talk to my subordinate about something that they're training on, just as well that they should be able to talk to me about that. And we should be on the same page. Nothing is worse than not understanding the world that your employee is in. It also provides, for let's say an operations person who's never been in transportation or hasn't been in a driver role. This is a way that you can immerse yourself in that world, right? This is a way that you can learn about it and start to have those common conversations. But plan out your calendar and stick to it. And I'm going to challenge you to pick 3 topics to start each month. So pick one that's industry related, like the upcoming CVSA, Operation Safe Driver Week next month, or August, right? What do we have in August? We've got Brake Safety Week. It's a great one to talk about. Talk about core topics like fatigue, distracted driving, and hours of service. These are all problem areas in the industry. They're always going to be problem areas in the industry. Talk about them, at least one of those topics a month. Hours of service only gets more frustrating and confusing for drivers. Fatigue is always going to be a problem. People not managing their sleep on home time. People driving, yes, I have hours, but should I be driving? I didn't sleep well last night. And distracted driving. right? Whether that's your cell phone, whether that's having a conversation with somebody else in the vehicle, even food and drink distractions. We should be talking about those things. And then a seasonal topic. So item 3, a seasonal topic, like heat safety, winter safety, sleep cycles, circadian rhythm, hydroplaning. All of these have seasonal applications, right? Heat safety, we're talking, beginning of the summer season, end of the spring season. Sleep cycles and circadian rhythm, that's fall, right? We've got light changing constantly. We're impacting our circadian rhythm. Winter safe driving, accident types, jackknifes, you name it, proper braking. So there's always a seasonal topic. You can also look at, FMCSA calendars, industry things. So like here on the screen, monthly National Work Zone Awareness Week, Distracted Driving Prevention Month. But create a plan, stick to it, reinforce your messaging with digital media, like email, social, and direct messaging. Learning cultures are built on repetition and expectation. So be consistent. If you want your drivers to take training every month, or you want your employees to take training every month, make sure that it's there for them when they log in at the beginning of the month. And that's where building this plan helps, right? Knowing where you're going to be and what you need to create before you get there. But expectation is everything here. Ensure that everyone takes the training. Again, we just talked about this, because learning cultures happen organically when we can all relate to each other's experiences.
Keith, one other thing that talking about what you've just been describing here is, if you have a plan and maybe you've got everything laid out for an entire year, and you're focused on things that make sense at the right time. I think it's much more accepted by the drivers out there, or the people you're trying to train, if, wow, they're really on top of this. This is coming into the fall, and now they've got an assignment about animal strikes. It makes it more appealing, I think, if you're focused on things that make sense at a given point in time. It wouldn't make sense to talk about heat stress and send them that assignment in January.
Right.
So I just think, having a great plan, which, by the way, you can alter as things change, which they
Correct.
do pretty frequently in this industry. You can kind of make some changes, but literally with an LMS, as the one we have, you could put this entire program, all your monthly training, all your annual training, all of that could be set up and built out at the very beginning. And
Correct.
It's pretty much on autopilot there, with the exception of your in-person follow-up and so forth.
Correct. That's there's nothing worse than throwing training at the wall and hoping it sticks, and putting training in the wrong place, right? It's not just about defensibility, it's about applicability.
Right.
Or, a lot of people, a lot of companies want to provide training to their employees, especially in safety sensitive industries, to cover themselves in the event of an incident, litigation, discovery. But it has to be more than that. We can't just check off a box and say, okay, we're done. That's not a learning culture.
Yeah.
Right. That's bad learning. So make it applicable. And I promise you, then when you come down to discovery and litigation, if that does happen, it also looks a lot better if you're training to applicable material rather than throwing, at the wall and hoping that it sticks.
Yeah.
It's worth the effort. It's worth the reward. And at the end of the day, above any of this, morale is boosted, retention rates go up, employees feel heard and valued. And I promise you, incidents are going to go down, accidents are going to go down, CSA is going to go down, because this all happens together. Steve, that's what I got.
That's fantastic. You know, training is one of those things that, sometimes, like you just mentioned, we're just ticking the box. We know we got to do some and we got to be able to document some. And that actually brings up another thing. If you have an LMS and you're making the assignments, it's also key to use the reporting features to make sure that you're getting compliance. If you've got a nice system out there and you've got a well-planned curriculum of training, but there's no push behind it to make sure that everybody is logging in and consuming the training, you're not going to have that corporate impact that you'd like to have if you only got 25 or 30% of your people that train on a regular basis.
Right.
So in some ways, you want a good, appealing training program that people want to take the training, but and in some ways you also have to have some mandatory requirements behind that to make sure that you're documenting training on everybody. And again, part of that's us having to cover our rear ends these days to be defendable in court and insurable and all the other reasons beside improving our employees and their productivity is protecting our company too.
Right.
So one of the things that I'm going to put up here on the screen, I mentioned earlier, our system, the Infinity system, has the capability to put an entire training plan together. Monthly training could all be set up in advance. Your annual trainings can be set up to automatically repeat on an annual basis, so you don't have to reset those all the time. And of course, good reporting that allows you to track and see who's doing it and who's not doing it. So any of you out there that aren't current customers, those of you that are customers now, you have the ability to do that. And if you want to reach out to customer service, they can help you set up an annual plan if you haven't done that. But if you'd like to learn a little bit more about our system, you can click yes or no there to the to this poll I'm going to put up on the screen, and we'll reach out to you and give you a little demo of the system to see if we've got a way that could help you get this plan put together. So, do anybody else have questions out there? I know some of you are kind of chatting with each other and sharing some information, which I think is great. But Keith, this was really, really good information. By the way, everybody that's on, we'll send out a link to a replay of this webinar. So if you have folks in your company that weren't able to join today, you'll be able to reach out to it. Let me get this poll off the screen here. And Keith, I'm assuming it's okay if any of the folks here have questions, they can reach out to you directly to tap into your expertise.
Correct.
And of course, you can reach out to me too if you'd like. If I can't answer the question, I can generally find someone that can. So thanks to everybody for joining us today. Keith, thank you once again. We appreciate it. Great information. And for all of you that joined today, I hope you have a good rest of the week. Today being the first day of summer, by the way. So the heat is on. So thank you all for coming. Keith, thanks for being on the panel. And
Thanks,
we
everyone.
appreciate everybody joining us this morning. Thank you all very much.